So after I finished up the Rogaldorn battle tank, I did like I always do and started cleaning off my desk for the next project. And the next project I'd planned on, had it on my list, was this Orky jet, which seemed like it would be a lot of fun. But in cleaning everything up, I found this box of parts. This is an Armiger Warglaive that I had assembled some time back and primed it. And I don't want to say that I forgot that I had it, but it has been quite a while since I actually remembered that I had it. So I just sort of serendipitously said, let's start painting this thing and see what happens. So I just started painting it. And I started off with one of my favorite techniques, which is using a darker silver to paint something. And it just gives it a real steely look. I like working with metallics. They just, especially with this stippling method, stippling and dry brushing metallics just is really a lot of fun. And so I got the silver on all the frame pieces because there's quite a bit on this little model kit. And then once I had all of the silver on, I started sponging on a lighter color of silver. Now, this to me yields one of the best results for metal that I've ever seen, because it really gives the metal kind of a distressed, textured, used look. It doesn't leave it looking flat. It doesn't leave it looking, I remember when I was in high school, I worked at McDonald's and we had this stainless steel countertops that we would, use for all sorts of things. And even those had, as smooth as they were, they had some scratch marks on them and things like that. So this kind of reminds me of that. And you don't really see the distinction in the difference between the silver colors when you sponge the lighter silver over the darker silver. If you hold it in a certain light, you can see it. But when you start adding a shade over it, I like using Nuln Oil for this. When you start adding Nuln Oil over it, then all of a sudden, all of that detail just really pops out. And I think one of these days I just need to do a model. It's just nothing but silver, because this isn't hard. I mean, you stipple on the darker color, you sponge on the lighter color, and then you just load it up with Nuln Oil. You don't even have to worry about if it pools in some areas. It just looks oily and dirty. It all seems to work together and looks pretty cool without even having to really pay attention to what you're doing. So before long, it became obvious that the Orky jet was not my next build, but it was this build. Have you ever done that? You start building something, you just want to check it out, maybe put a few parts together, maybe do a little bit of painting, and then the next thing you know, you realize, okay, you're just fully involved with this. When I started dry brushing on the final layer of metallics to kind of pop out the highlights, I started realizing, okay, I guess this is my next project. And it was perfect for it, because it was, I can't remember if it was a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon. It's been a week now. But it was one of those rare times where I have a long chunk of time to model. Most of my modeling is done between 4:30 and 6 in the mornings when I get up before I go to work. Because that's just the time that it's quiet in the house. That's the time when, nobody else is up. That's the time when I can turn on the camera, do this microphone thing, and not have to worry about a lot of background noise. But for this one, I just decided, well, let me just roll the camera and just see what happens and see if, I can end up making anything of it. And that's the beauty of a kit, I think, that's this size. This Warglaive is not a real big model. You can see there, the main part of it is, in my hand. It's a palm of your hand kind of model. And I think that's one of the things that has really attractive to me about building Warhammer vehicles. I've begun focusing entirely on Warhammer, and I've had a few folks contact me and say, "Hey, I wish you would do some machining Krieger, some Gunpla, some other stuff like you used to do." And I'm not saying I'll never do those again, but I'm having so much fun with these because for the most part, I mean, yeah, there's the Rogel tank, which is a bigger model, and the Orky Jet's a bigger model, but they're not real involved in the assembly process. They're fairly quick and easy to assemble, and I've realized that one of the things I don't like about some other models is the amount of time it takes to assemble, the amount of just the number of steps. Assembly is my least favorite part. I think that's one of the reasons I don't build Gunpla anymore. I love painting them. I love weathering them. I especially love weathering them in ways that people who build Gunpla hate that I weather them in, because they always say that's not to scale. But anyway, but when you get 250 parts up on sticks so you can prime it, it just kind of sucks the life out of it. And it's not always possible to fully build it and then paint it and get everything painted either. Yet with these Warhammer kits, they may have a lot of options and a few may have a lot of parts, but they just go together. You can assemble 80% of it, and you've got some subsections, some sub-assemblies that you leave off to make things easier to get, and then you just prime everything, and you go to work. And that's what I like about them, and that's what I really like about this little Warglaive. In fact, the Warglaive is a type of what's called Armiger. There's also the Armiger Helverin, and I've built 2 of those. So this is my 3rd Armiger that I've built. First time I built the Warglaive version of it. And I think this has to be one of my favorite kits that I've ever built in the Warhammer world. Just because, well, of all of these things. It's quick and easy to assemble. It's fun to paint. There's loads of detail on it. There's just so much to commend about this model. I mean, if you're going to focus on having fun, if that's what I advocate, that's what I try to do, to just have fun. That's why I was enjoying this project so much. I wasn't having to talk over it. I wasn't having to worry about how is this going to pace as a video. I just turned the camera on and let it run, and I figured I'd edit things later. I became unaware of the camera being on. In fact, the footage you're seeing is the footage where I actually stayed on camera. There was so many times that I'd be working along and suddenly look down and realize that I drifted completely off camera and out of focus. And I just wasn't paying attention to it. So this project really became about just having fun, and it was kind of unexpected. Finding the box of parts and going, oh yeah, I forgot I had assembled this, and here it is. And I think that's really what when it comes down to it, for me, and I know it's different for everybody else, maybe, but it really is about having fun. It really is about relaxing and doing something that distracts me from the regular day. I mean, I've got a day job as a web developer, and I like my job. I'm thankful for my job. But as with any job, I deal with difficult customers and difficult situations. I've been doing this job for 25 years. And again, while I'm very thankful for my job, as I get older, it just, you just start going, man, I'm ready for retirement, and it's still 11 years away. So I've got a ways to go, but just sitting down and building a simple model really helps just take my mind off of the things that I've got to deal with. I mean, I've got some health issues that I face, nothing too dramatic, nothing that most people my age don't face. There's always, you know, financial things that we have to account for. We're not busted out with money. We pay our bills and we eat our meals, and I'm thankful for that. But you know, it's always paycheck to paycheck, and that's the way I've always lived. But having this time to just paint, to just, you know, put on decals and put on the things that go on the model and just use imagination. And I'm still a big kid in how I model, in that I'm just constantly thinking about, okay, if this were a real thing, what would it be like? You know, what would the pilot's name be? You know, for some reason, I started really thinking about the notion of, is there an air conditioner in this thing? You know, and I thought that's part of the beauty of the process, that I'm sitting there and I'm painting and I'm putting on decals and I'm trying to make this thing look pretty nice. I'm not too worried about, as you'll see, I don't do any weathering on it. I don't do any special, you know, any kind of crazy effects or anything like that. It's just painting decals. That's it. But I started thinking about, are these darn things air conditioned? I mean, I would assume there would be, but I've been inside an armored vehicle that was not air conditioned, an M113 armored personnel carrier, and it gets real hot. It gets really hot in there. And so I'm looking at this and going, I wonder if this is air conditioned. You know, I wonder if you know, it's got a water dispenser in it, or if he just has to bring along his canteen water and it gets hot. You know, if it's in cold weather, is it heated? Silly things like that. But it's that stuff that takes my mind off of the day-to-day, that while not unpleasant, just tends to make life Groundhog Day. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, watch it and then watch it again. You'll get that joke when you do. But it just reminds me of the kid that's still deep down in me, and how enjoyable these models are. And it helped to remind me of that fact, and kind of show me that I've been getting too caught up in this idea of trying to be successful on YouTube. It's not a bad thing to try and be successful at, but for whatever reason, it's just not me. It's just not happening. And I was letting that pursuit take a little bit of the fun out of what it is that I'm doing, painting tiny toys. And I've had to kind of step back and go, you know what? You're not a creator. You're not a YouTuber. You're not, you know, you're not that guy. You're not clever. You're not funny. You're still shooting videos on your camera phone. And I've tried something else, but I just couldn't get it to work. Too many little buttons and dials and knobs. And I've just realized, like Popeye, I am what I am. I'm an old guy who builds models and rambles on in the background talking about building models. And every now and then, you know, I mean, I get a lot of nice comments and I appreciate them. You know, it always makes me feel good when people say, hey, you've helped me. You know, you showed this in a way that I'd not been able to understand, and you explained it in a way that I did. That's great to hear. I always appreciate that. But there's always one or two that leave a comment that go, you talk too much, you ramble on, your videos are too long. You know, you're not that skilled of a modeler. You're not that skilled of a videographer. And I've realized I just need to step back and go, yep, that's right. This is who I am. This is what I am. That's just the way it is. It's just me. It's just me making models and sharing the fun. You know, I was always the kid that was, you know, when we would be playing in the backyard or in the playground or whatever, I was always the kid that just kind of wanted everybody to get along and have fun. because that was a lot more fun for me. And, you know, wasn't that I wasn't competitive or didn't want to win the baseball game or the football game or whatever. But even when I was young, I thought, you know, this is about the fun. This is about having fun. And so this little Warglaive kind of helped remind me of that. And as I got finished up with it, you can see that, you know, I'm starting to finish up, starting to glue everything together. As I finished it, I realized that the model itself, I mean, it looks okay. It's not a bad looking model. I tried to emulate a little bit of what Duncan Rhodes did in his video that kind of, I'd seen the Warhammer video where he built this, and it kind of prompted me to do something very, very similar to what he did. And I was happy with it, but the real big effect for me was just the thinking that I got to do, and the kind of acceptance and realization that I'm just, like I said, I'm just a kind of boring guy who builds models and likes to talk about them and hopes that people have fun with them, and that they get some relaxation and they get some enjoyment out of it. And they don't worry about, you know, the pressure of doing something that maybe isn't really what they want to do. Now, you know, if you like the pressure of, if you like, you know, say building for contests, or, you know, painting to a very high level and really challenging yourself, if that's what's fun, do it. But I'm finally able to start admitting that the way I've been doing it has not always been what was really fun for me. And it was making me less than happy. I mean, I was still doing the thing that I enjoyed, but I wasn't enjoying it to the extent that I could otherwise. And it was taking on a life of its own. So I guess if there's a point to this, it's every now and then step back, build a model just for the heck of it, and really consider, are you having fun with what you're doing? Is this how you have fun? Or have you let unfun elements creep into the model? So as this video is, you're probably thinking, thankfully coming to a close, I'll just say that I'm really refocusing on having fun, on doing the things that I enjoy and not worrying about the rest, and really trying to live by what I always say at the end of every video. And if you've watched mine, you know what it is. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I really mean that. Happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.